All right, welcome back. I'm Kaylee. This is my mother, Pastor Donna, who has been a wife, pastor, mother extraordinaire for about 3 decades.
I don't know about extraordinaire, but there you go.
Oh, definitely extraordinaire. That's why we're here. I'm like, we need to hear from you, myself included. And this is a video series we're doing Asking for a Friend. So we have questions from different women and women who sent other women questions. We want the real answers. So Pastor Donna does not know what these questions are beforehand, which is fun for me, scary for her.
Very scary.
So here we go. Today, we're going to talk about transparency in the church with each other, transparency in relationships. Kind of centered around the question of confessing sin to other humans and not just God. I know that, there's different realms to that, right? There's spouses, there's friends, there's parents, there's pastors, all of whom you can confess to. But can we just start with, what do you see as a benefit or the benefit of confessing sin, not just to God, but to other human beings?
Yeah. I think the moment, right out of the gate, I would say, the moment we confess, it disarms the enemy.
Yeah.
That fast. Even if there's been a weight, on your chest and you're carrying something, you've been struggling with, something secret or whatever. And then the moment I would say that out loud to somebody, you know, okay, but now we have to use wisdom. Can you imagine if me as a pastor was like, I'm just going to take this opportunity in this message and I'm going to confess on my sin. That would do damage, not just to me and my relationships, but that would do damage, right? So I think we have to use wisdom. But that God will bring friendships around. I think in friendship, it is important for us to be transparent.
Yeah.
There's different levels, of course.
Right.
For instance, when I'm talking to someone that is pastorally, that I would view pastorally speaking, a mentor, a pastoral leader in my life, I make pretty full confessions.
Yeah.
I don't want to hold anything back because I want to be free from everything. And it's amazing even when, I confess something and be like, man, I just literally totally lost it. I lost it with Doug. I lost it with the kids. And help me right now. Even as I say it, it's like the weight. The enemy just loves us to not confess. Right. Because then we carry the weight. Right. As soon as I confess it, it's like the weight is gone. Yep. That's healthy community. Yep. But there is also, in the Bible, it talks about us not putting our pearls before the swine, and that's a different context. But in the sense, I have to be very careful. That is something very close. That's a treasure. I have to be careful who I am being transparent with. Right. Yeah. So, there's different levels. For instance, I am very, we have a lot of guys and girls on our staff and men and women. There's a way I would share something transparently with what I'm going through with you that would be different, I would be sharing it with someone that's my mentor. That would be different than if I was talking to my spouse. That would be again different if I was just talking to a man on our team. Right. So one of the things I think about, it's okay, when I'm going through something or I'm battling something, there might be a vagueness with certain groups. I'm being transparent. I'm not being everything's good, folks. My life's great. I'm not struggling with anything. But I am not going to be hey, a man on our staff, oh my word, I was up till 3 a.m. and here's what I was really stressed about, or I was dealing with these really harsh thoughts or bad thoughts. And that's not the person. Right. That's not, anytime you confess, you tie yourself kind of to somebody. Right. And so you have to be in a relationship where I trust them, where I trust that they hear from God, that I trust that they have my best interest in mind. Right. And, one of the things we say a lot of times is you inform up and you counsel down. Right. So I'm not going to I'm not going to inform down and tell everybody all the things that I'm going through or what happened, but I am definitely going to go up. And I would say it has brought such freedom. Right. For years, I think women, in particular, women in ministry felt like they couldn't share what was really going on at all. In fact, I would look at the women that I knew in ministry and be they're perfect. Their house is perfect. Their kid, everything's they never have insecurity. They never have comparison. They never have doubt. They never screwed up. And yet that obviously years later, that's not true, but that's literally how it would appear to me, And so it trapped me.
Right.
And so like that first couple of years of lead pastor,
Yeah.
when I didn't have an upline,
Right.
like when we were youth pastor, I just felt like I always had uplines.
Right.
And then all of a sudden I was like,
right.
I don't have an upline, And I think in that season, it was like, we didn't even talk about having counselors either. Like that was kind of like a taboo thing, like meant like a sign of weakness if you had to talk to someone.
Yeah.
And so, man, I was struggling. I was having a breakdown, and I was having not good thoughts. I was, and maybe this is too transparent with you all because this is going on the World Wide Web, but
air it out.
I remember this moment where I was crashing.
Yeah.
It was like year 2. There was some relational breakdown on our team in the church plant. And I was struggling, and I was not talking to anyone because I thought that was more godly. I thought it was actually more godly for me to not put anything on anybody. But the problem was I was blowing up inside. I was having thoughts. I never had suicidal thoughts, but I had thoughts of driving away and just disappearing. And I didn't even walk out what that would actually look like or mean. It was just, I was having just intrusive thoughts of me just like never coming back and not even thinking about it. And I remember one day where I was just honestly crying. I couldn't get out of bed, and I didn't get you guys ready for school. And Doug had been in an appointment, and he comes back and I'm still in bed, and it's like 10:30 and you guys are not at school. And
we were probably not complaining.
Oh no, because you were large and in charge then.
Yes.
She's like, kids.
Yes.
Because you walked into my bedroom and I said, I can't talk. Like, I just need you to go.
Yeah.
And so you were like, okay. So, I mean, you guys had food out. You were playing, video games, watching cartoons, whatever it was. You're not at school.
Yeah.
And yet I was having like a total breakdown and was not talking to anyone.
Right.
And wasn't even, just all of the things was bottled up.
Right.
And I remember Doug coming home being like, what is happening?
Right.
In that moment, I had to make a decision if I was going to open up and be transparent.
Yeah.
I thought being a leader meant I had to always appear that I had it all together. I never thought I had it all together. I just thought I had to appear that way. And so in that moment was literally a pivotal, life-changing moment where Doug's like, you need to talk to somebody. And I reached out to a mentor of mine from back home, and she's still in my life where I can still call her, and she's a lifeline. And really it's stuff, is it confession? Some of it's confession of sin. Right. I did this. I said this. I am struggling with this thought. This is what all the things. And some of it is just, she cares for my heart.
Right.
And she believes in me. So be careful who you are transparent with, because people will use it against you if you're not talking to the right people. So talk to the right people. Right. But be transparent.
Right. Okay. On that, I mean, this isn't even a question I've been prepared with, but I'm thinking about how I'm a newlywed. Yeah. Right. Finding the balance of protecting your marriage, covering your spouse, and yet sometimes you still need to seek help.
Yes.
Talk about the balance of covering your marriage, but also seeking help for your marriage.
I think it really comes down to, what is your motive? If your motive is to secretly prove yourself right in what's happening in your marriage, and like getting someone to come to your defense, that's not the right motive.
Oof, yeah.
Like if so it's good. Like, I need someone to validate, like I am ticked off, and here's why.
I've never felt that way. I don't know what you're talking about.
I never have either, Doug and I never fight. But no, it's like, what is the motive for that? If your motive is upline and you're saying, hey, I'm still careful because I want to remember, like, I always want to honor Doug. Yeah. I always want to respect him. I never want to tear him down, like that Bible verse that I always have that in my head. A wise woman builds her house. Yeah. So I want to, everything that has to be like constructive, it's for good. The person who I'm talking to, my pastor, my leader, the person who I'm talking with, is not just there to defend me, is there to challenge me. Right. I will not talk to anybody about those deep things that isn't going to look me in the face and be like, Donna, you are so in the wrong on this.
You're the issue.
Because then I just don't want someone to be like, oh, sweetheart, your husband sucks. No, it's, I need someone that's going to speak truth to me. Yeah. So surround yourself by people that are willing to speak truth to you. Yep. Not just like, comfort your heart and your feelings. Right. So I think you have to be very careful. I think for some of the intimate things in marriage, it's not something you talk about with your friends.
Yeah.
Like I personally get a little uncomfortable with some of the banter in this generation.
Yeah.
Because some of it does uncover some things that were really meant to be between, you know, a spouse,
Right.
a husband and a wife.
Yeah.
And when there is problems, like even with intimacy or with fighting, or one of the spouse like acted poorly or yelled or whatever, it's like we have to like care about that person so much that I'm going to get help for sure. I'm not saying don't get help, but get help with the person that's there to help.
Right.
Not your friend, your cousin, your auntie, your mom. That's not the person to air out your husband's dirty laundry. In fact, you're going to harm him and actually do the opposite of that verse, which is a wise man builds, doesn't tear down. So my purpose, it all comes down to what is my motive for sharing this? Is it to make me look good? Is it to validate my feelings, my resentment, my things that I'm feeling? Or is it to actually get help and actually get closer to my husband? So is this going to make me farther away from my husband or closer to my husband?
Oh, that's so good.
You know.
Okay, when it comes to selecting the person you're going to be transparent or confess your sins or your things to, what would you say to a woman who's really struggling with a fear of being judged? And that could be about marriage, but that could be about so many other things too, right? So many sins. What would you say to a woman who's
like who's trying to choose? Like, how do you choose someone?
Like if I was like, I need to confess this sin. There are things weighing my heart and my spirit down, but I am so scared of being judged. What?
Go to someone ahead of you. That's like, you can see like some road. You can see some journey.
Right. Yeah.
And because I promise you, those that have been through something, they're not going to judge you in the same way that someone's like, you know, hasn't been on that journey. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it totally makes sense.
It's like, find someone ahead of you. I'm not going to share these things with just anybody. But I want to look around. Also, you know, one of the ways I have decided whether I'm going to, what level of transparency I'm going to be with someone, for instance, is what are they talking about? When I'm hanging out with them, if they're tearing others down, not my person. You know, if they're like, oh my gosh, like not my person. Even if they're older than me and I think they should be farther along in the Lord. What I hear them talking about really helps me know where their heart is and if their heart is going to be to judge me. So say there's something that I'm feeling like, oh my gosh, is shame. I mean, the enemy loves to work in shame, right? He wants us to hold on to things because we're afraid of what someone's going to say. And so then he paralyzes us and nobody really knows what's really going on. That's not a healthy place to be in. But who I would choose to talk to was very, very important. I think that there has to be fruit. You know, you judge a tree by their fruit. And if I see the people around that person scared of them, that would be a sign to me. There's something about that person that doesn't feel safe. That is like, I'm not sure what it is. I can't even put my finger on. But people around them kind of like are a little bit like, careful. And that might be somebody that is not going to be as, you know, understanding. Or like, help me through it. I don't know if that makes sense.
You reminded me, there was a thing that you said to me a bunch growing up where you were like, the enemy's first tactic when it comes to making you feel ashamed is to convince you that you're the only one who's done that sin.
Oh my word.
Right?
Yes.
And that's what he does.
Yes. 100%.
I remember like there was one point, I think this was my senior year of high school where, I mean, and back to the idea of just confession in general, I had been struggling with something for years and God had healed me of that thing. But it wasn't until I confessed it to you.
I remember that moment.
Yeah. I'm just like tearing up right now just thinking about it. Because like it was a confession of another human that actually was what really freed me of the guilt and shame I was experiencing.
And I think that's what we miss in community these days. Is because, and it says it in the Bible, to confess your sins one to another. To like, there is a Bible truth that sets us free. You know, I remember this moment in one of our beautiful conferences that I started the conference very intentionally with something I'd seen at another conference.
Right.
And I had women identify some areas like, I have had an abortion. I have been divorced. I have, you know, some confessions that maybe you just don't want to be out there.
Right.
So I had them fill this out. And then switch it. And I stole this from someone, so don't think it's original with me. But it was so powerful, I wanted to copy it. Because it blew me away. So they filled very honest things. Like, I am struggling.
It was anonymous, right?
Yeah, anonymous. So this eating disorder, like all of these things. Then I had the women to commit to not looking. And I had them switch papers with each other. You know, so there's hundreds of people just switching papers. And then I stood there and I said, your paper that you're holding now has been passed, 10 times. You don't know, you have no idea whose paper this is now. But you're gonna identify as that woman today. And I remember there was maybe 400 women there that year. And I remember saying, like, I would say, I have had an abortion. And if you've had an abortion, you stand up and you're identifying what's on your piece of paper. And I looked around the room and there's 30 women that stood up.
Wow.
And as we went, I cried. Because as we went through thing after thing, I've been divorced, I have been molested, I have hurt somebody else, like all of these confessions of the soul as we...
Those things that had been done to them and things that all the things we hold.
Yes, all the things we hold.
Yeah.
In that moment, it was one of my favorite moments ever. That beautiful conference, because we disarmed the enemy like that. Because all of a sudden that woman that I had talked to that thought she was probably the only person in our Christian community that had had an abortion looked around the room and was like, wow, oh my word, I'm not the only one. So part of why the enemy likes us to not talk and not bare our souls is because then we literally believe, I'm the only one that deals with this. And then the enemy is like in control of that. And it's like he has this chain on you. And it's like once it's out, it's out. And you're like, okay, here we go. That's why even with the magazine that we work on with testimonies, I'm like, please be honest in these. Please say the thing. Please go there. Not because I think I want to embarrass them. Quite the opposite. I want them to be free, and I want them to load other women. That they can go through these things and be free. Not be shamed.
Can I just give the example? That was that one in the bedroom where I confessed. So I had been struggling. With masturbation for like 3 years and hadn't told anyone. And it was like an everyday thing, and it was crippling. I mean, it was crippling to me. And God had healed me, but I hadn't confessed.
Never said it to me.
And then I came to you, and you were like, Kaylee, when I was younger, I struggled with that too. And I just began to weep because I was like,
that shame was on
the shame,
you. And it's like the enemy is so sneaky with that.
So sneaky.
He thinks that if you hold it in and you don't confess it, that it's better that way. And actually, it just traps you there.
It traps you.
It traps you there. So and God wants women to be like free. And again, it's not like you weren't going in and announcing that. Well, now you have, but
hello world.
But you're not like announcing that. That was like something that you came to me with in our relationship, because you trusted me to pray for you and to say, hey, that doesn't define you. And give you that freedom. And I remember literally almost like the burden came off you, like almost in a physical way.
It changed my life.
And it was just this beautiful thing. And I thought, hey, if we're willing to go there, those things that we just, as ladies, we don't want to talk about.
Don't talk about it.
If we are willing to go there, it's like we give God full access to our lives. And we're, again, just shaming the devil and disarming his plot to always have those things lingering, like we're not good enough. Or if people only knew. If people only knew the fight you just had with your spouse, or what you just said, or what you just did, or what you just looked at. And so we tried to, manage that. But obviously, it's managing us. Till we really go back to what the Word of God says.
So good. Okay, let's flip the conversation. What would you say, either just to pastors or even just people who are mentors and what are your tips when somebody confesses to you? How do you respond to that well, without making them feel judged, but also not condoning sin?
Right.
But, how do you walk that balance?
One thing I do, and I don't know if it's right or wrong, it's just what I feel in my heart. When someone is brave enough to share something, I want to immediately stand up and hug them.
Yeah, and you do. She does.
It's literally like all I can think about is I want to hug them.
Right.
Because my heart is like, we represent the nature of God in that moment.
Yeah.
Like this is a God moment.
Right.
And if I don't represent Christ's character who sat with the woman at the well and, when everybody was trying to stone the woman, he said, he's without sin. Throw the first stone.
Right.
We as leaders, we represent Christ and his nature.
Yeah.
And if we come with kind of like a pensive face and body language says as much as our words do.
Right.
And it's kind of like, that is like, what do they say? That imprint moment where you have like a core memory. If someone has bravely confessed something of a very serious nature, that is a core memory for them.
Yeah.
And I get to write
Yeah.
in that core memory
Yep.
the love of God. I get to
That's
literally
powerful.
emboss into that literally neurological core memory
Right.
God's love.
Yeah.
And I feel like one of the best ways to do that is literally showing them a hug and loving them before we say one thing, before I comment, before I'm like, okay, I have some wisdom for you, or, that you just wrote into their core memory.
Yeah.
A little bit of shame, a little bit of like, oh my gosh, I just shocked my pastor.
Right.
Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Maybe I
Right.
shouldn't have said that to my leader.
Right.
Like, and so I think as leaders, we have it's like this beautiful opportunity
Right.
to be like,
Yeah.
I'm okay with you.
Right.
And guess what? I honestly, one of the things I think we as leaders is can show a lot of joy in that moment.
Yeah.
Because when someone confesses to me, the picture I get is a chain just broke.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like boom,
Yep.
a chain just broke. The enemy, I'm like, goodbye.
Yep. Yep.
And so to me, I show love first and I show joy second.
Yep.
Because that is like the freedom that I begin to just speak into their life.
Right.
Like, do you realize
Right.
you're so scared to tell me?
Right.
Do you realize
Right.
that you just got set free?
Right.
I mean,
Everybody up in heaven's not
yes,
like, ew.
no, like
they're
gross.
cheering.
That's a gross, no.
Right.
They're cheering. And
Yep.
I, as a leader and pastor, I want to reflect that nature of God, that he
Yes.
is celebrating. Finally,
Right.
like, get it out. There is nothing we can say
Yep.
to God,
Yep.
that is like, oh, he's like ashamed with that or grossed out by
Right.
that. There's nothing.
Right.
So I think we as leaders, we get to set the stage for that.
Yep.
And let us be leaders that don't have a look of shock or horror or
Yep.
even just nothing. Because
Right.
nothing is a message.
Oh, yeah.
When we're like,
Yep.
that you already said something.
Yep.
That was shameful. Like,
Right.
wow. And
Yep.
I think instead we show love and we show grace and we show joy.
Right.
Not saying that
Right.
I'm like, hey, that's a great thing. God doesn't care about that. No, then we begin to talk.
Yep.
But you imprinted on that core memory,
Yeah.
the nature of God.
Right.
That's our role.
So you would say love 1st, joy second,
Yeah. And then let's go there.
and then truth.
Yep. Let's go.
That is powerful.
And that's what I think about every time when someone
Yeah.
says something to me. I'm like, okay, first, show them love.
Right.
Second, how exciting is this moment? Here we
Right.
go.
Right.
Second, we have to give you some tools.
Yep.
We have to get some truth. We got to get some boundaries.
Yeah.
We got to get some accountability.
Yeah.
We got to get some help.
Right.
And let's go there.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay. Any final thoughts for us on transparency, not having a church with culture of judgment, confession of sin? Any final thoughts for us today?
I think the picture I get is whenever I give somebody some information, I have put a weight on them with that information. And so some people are graced to different levels
Wow.
to handle that information.
Wow.
I have some friends that are their grace level to carry the weighty things that sometimes I would want to share. They're not grace for them. And so
Wow.
I've messed up on that.
Right.
Where I have put on friends that maybe that's not supposed to be their role in my life. They're not
Right.
supposed to be my armor bearer. They're supposed to be like my shopping friend.
Wow.
And now I just dump load
right.
this weight of things I'm carrying. And so I think always ask yourself, like, and ask the Lord to lead you and guide you, who is graced to carry what I'm sharing?
Right.
And so that's something I'm thinking about.
Right.
Think about every time I tell somebody something, I just put a weight on them of some sort.
Right.
And so make sure you're putting on people that can carry that weight. And don't assume that everybody is your person. You don't have to share everything with everybody.
Yeah.
But you do have to share everything.
And that's so good because it's not just pastors.
Yeah.
It's wherever you are on the journey in your maturity in Christ, there's going to be people ahead of you and people behind you.
And the same way, it would be very unwise if you're having marriage troubles.
Right.
You know, if Doug and I have a massive fight, I'm not going to be like to my 15-year-old, which parents do all the time.
Oh, we can go there.
That is not the space.
Yep.
In fact, you just now put a burden on a child who's not mature enough.
Right.
There's the motive is you being right. Or you actually putting a wedge between that child and the other spouse.
Right.
So to me, like, that is a good example.
Your daughter cannot be your best friend.
They can't.
They cannot. Yeah.
They're not. That's going to kill them.
Yep.
And guess what? It does. It hurts relationships.
Yeah.
So we have to know every time we open our mouths with the deeper things of life, it actually, you're putting a weight on someone. Is that someone that is graced to handle that?
That's so
and that
good.
doesn't mean they're less or a good friend or more mature, whatever. It's just like, are they graced to handle that? There's some people I can share health things with. They're graced to handle that.
Yeah.
But if I tell them actually what I'm carrying, dear God, it would crush them.
Yeah.
They would be like, oh my word. And they would come to my defense.
Yeah.
But they're not graced to carry that.
Right.
And it would actually burden their spirits and hinder their walk with Christ.
Yeah. That's so good. That's so good.